Welcome, all my fellow Redskin brethren and sistren. It's news that's nightly about the Redskins. Welcome to the Redskins Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So, I teased yesterday at the end of the Redskins Nightly News that there could be a situation and a scenario in which Bruce Allen could get fired this offseason. Now, I don't personally believe this. Okay, let me reiterate this, and I'm going to continue to reiterate that throughout everything I'm about to say. But there are a couple of podcasts that I listen to, and there are a lot of podcasts that I dibble and dabble in. You know, the D'Angelo Hall and Aaron Hawksworth podcast, Hail to the Pod, I dibble and dabble on with that one. And the John Keim Report, I dibble and dabble in that one as well. But I'm not a consistent listener to those podcasts, but you know, I take pieces from that and I listen, and I always challenge you guys as fans. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Redskins fan, an Eagles fan, a Falcons fan. It really doesn't matter. I challenge every fan. And I've always said that sports is a microcosm of life. I challenge you in life as well to do the same thing. Don't just settle for what people tell you. Formulate your own opinions, okay? Gather all the information that you can, and then you draw your own inference, or you come to your own conclusion, all right? This is why you took 7th grade science, so you could actually go through the entire scientific method and formulate a hypothesis, and then do an experiment and test your hypothesis to find out if that conclusion that you come up with fits your hypothesis or not, proves it wrong or proves it right. That's what you need to do with all the information that's out there. You take in as much information, and you may have a preconceived notion or thought process as to how something is working, should work. And again, that's your hypothesis. Then you get all the information that you can, and then you test it against your hypothesis. So what I'm telling you is, I don't know everything about the Redskins. I know a lot about what I see, but I'm not close enough to what's going on around Redskins Park to be able to give you all the things that you need as fans. So I try to get them from people that are. So that's why 2 podcasts in particular are ones that I really flock towards. That's the Kevin Sheehan Show podcast, and he does a radio show on a local program. I don't listen to his radio program, but I do listen to his podcast. And the Redskins Talk podcast, and that's hosted by J.P. Finley, Mitch Tisler, and Pete Haley. Now, I'm a Kevin Sheehan guy. I've always been a Kevin Sheehan guy. This goes back into the days. Me and him kind of share the same thought process and the same competitive spirit. He's ultra competitive. I'm ultra competitive. We kind of see things alike. We see a lot of the same things in the same way. However, I don't always agree with him. He doesn't always agree with what I'm saying, because obviously if I don't agree with him, then he's probably not going to agree with what I'm saying. But we generally share the same sentiments. All right. Now, last year, I thought that Bruce Allen was going to get fired. Remember, I was adamant. A lot of you told me Bruce Allen's not getting fired. He's got a lifetime deal here, and as long as he wants to be the team president, he'll be here. All right. And I said, no. He's getting fired. Everybody's getting fired. Everybody's got to go. Remember after that Giants game, you know, that at halftime of that Giants game, I came on and I ranted. You know, I said, everybody's got to go. We got to clean house. Jay's got to go. Bruce has got to go. We got to figure this shit out. And nobody went anywhere. Okay. Greg Minuski didn't go. Jay didn't go. Bruce didn't go. Okay. I struck out. So a lot of the reason why I felt confident that Bruce was going to go was not only because I felt like it was the right thing to do. Jay didn't need to be here, especially if you were going to draft a new quarterback. Jay didn't need to be here, right? Bruce didn't need to be here because the record speaks for itself. You know, Bruce was the one that famously said, your record speaks for itself. You are what your record says you are. And Kirk Cousins' record wasn't good enough. Well, your record isn't good enough. Now, all of a sudden, and I've done this before, I'm not going down that road again, but I thought that it was the time for the Redskins to clean house last year. Well, they didn't. But the reason I thought that they were going to, and I was so adamant that they were, was because Kevin Sheehan thought that they were going to move on from Bruce Allen and from Jay Gruden and everyone else and the entire staff. And so that made me feel confident. Now, Kevin Sheehan hasn't always been right. All right. He's had his misses in the past, most notably thinking that everyone was going to be fired last year, including Bruce Allen. That was a big miss. But he's had a lot of things right. He's broken a lot of stories, like the Josh Norman getting benched last year in New Orleans story, why that actually happened. He was the one that had the sources on the inside that told him that Josh Norman had on his headphones at halftime and Jay Gruden got pissed off and benched him to start the second half. That was Kevin Sheehan that released that information. He's had a bunch of stories that he has pretty much broken on his podcast, or on his radio programs throughout the years, because he's got people on the inside that he trusts, that trust him. So I'm not there yet. I'm not at the point where I've got people on the inside that can give me the information that I need to be able to give to you guys. I'll be there one day, though. I will be at that point where I've got contacts on the inside that can give me the temperature of what's going on at Redskins Park. And I'll be there soon enough. Don't you worry. But I'm not there yet. So I need to lean on guys that are at Redskins Park, like a J.P. Finley, like a Pete Haley, like a Mitch Tischler, who cover the team, all right, and can gauge a little bit of the temperature. And I need to lean on guys like Kevin Sheehan, who have guys on the inside that he trusts, that give him credible and pertinent information that he can then pass along to us. So when Kevin says this year that he has talked to people inside that building that believe Bruce Allen is going to get fired, it gives me just a slight bit of hope. Not a lot, okay? Let me reiterate this, and I told you I'm going to continue to reiterate this, because when he doesn't get fired, I don't want you coming back and saying, I said he was going to get fired. I repeat, I do not believe Bruce Allen is going anywhere this offseason. All right? I don't. But Kevin says, look, he's talked to some people on the inside, and he's not saying it's definite. Okay, that's not what he's saying, but he said he's getting the feeling that Dan Snyder is getting fed up. He's at that point again. And remember, for me, and it still is, rock bottom for me was after the 2009 season with Jim Zorn in year 2. That was my lowest point as a Redskin fan. I don't think I've ever been any lower than that. Okay, and there's context to that, but I felt like there was no hope. And if you remember when we hit that 2009 season, remember that was the swinging gate season. All right, that was swinging gate versus the Giants, back-to-back fake field goals. That was the worst thing I'd ever seen on a field with the Redskins being involved. I mean, that season was, I thought, as bad as it could get. And then we got Mike Shanahan to come in. And remember, all the changes that took place. Remember, after that, that's when Vinny had to go. All right, it was so low, Vinny had to go. It was so low, Jim Zorn had to go. Everybody had to go. And we had to start this thing anew. And unfortunately, we didn't know at the time we were going to get Bruce Allen. And it was going to get worse, potentially. All right? But Mike Shanahan came in and he saved the day. Temporarily, but he saved the day. He gave me hope, at least. I think Dan Snyder's at that point again, because we weren't at that point. Remember, nobody wanted the job back in 2009. Okay? So that's how we ended up with Jim Zorn, or back in 2007, excuse me, when we didn't give Greg Williams the job the first time around. And he should have been the head coach. But nobody wanted the job. We, as Redskins fans, went nuts when we thought that Jim Fossil was going to be the head coach. And so he pulled that offer back from Jim Fossil. And that's how Jim Zorn ended up, because Fossil had already started to hire his staff, and Zorn was the offensive coordinator. So when we pulled the rug from under Jim Fossil, Zorn was left, and he's like, you know what? Why don't we interview you? And he ended up being the head coach. But I didn't think if nobody wanted the job after Joe Gibbs left, why would anybody want the job where it's way worse after Jim Zorn left? And we didn't have a lot of talent, and we didn't have a great team at that point. You know, I was at a low point as a Redskin fan back in 2009, going into the 2010 season. And then Mike Shanahan came and that splash came and you started to feel hope because this is a 2-time winning Super Bowl coach and I know he can run the football. But remember how bad the roster was? Ryan Terrain, all right, guys like that. Anthony Armstrong. Like, think about where we were as Redskins fans at that moment. We had a 2011 quarterback battle between John Beck and Rex Grossman. Let that sink in for a second. That's how low we were at that point. We were bad in the Shanahan days. Now think about this. For as bad as we were then, 3-13 was as low as we ever got. This franchise has never, in its illustrious history, never seen 2-14 or 1-15. Never. Listen to what I'm saying to you. We've been bad. And I remember when I was a young little tyke running around, we high. Okay? Back in those days, when the Redskins were transitioning away from Gibbs 1.0, and we ended up hiring Norv Turner. There were some bad years over that course of about 6 years or so with Norv before he won the division in 99. From 93 or 94 on to about 98, there were some bad Redskin teams in there, man. Especially 94, 95, 96. One year in there, I think 96 was the year we actually started out pretty damn good, but we finished the season off poorly. But there were some bad years in there. You know, Terry Allen was the running back, and I remember I would cry after losses. We were bad, but we were never 2-14 bad or 1-15 bad. Hell, even during the 20 years of hell that Dan has put us through, we've had 3-13. We've had 4-12, 5-11, 6-10. Not very good. Not very good. But we've never had 2-14. We've never had 1-15. This is a new low for us, okay? It's a new low. And Dan is starting to feel that. Now, we're never going to get the accountability piece that we're looking for, which is Dan admitting that he's got a part in this and that Bruce is largely to blame for where we are right now. They've already placed a ton of blame on Jay Gruden. That's why he's not here, okay? They tried to make him the scapegoat. We're not going to get the accountability piece that we're looking for from those guys in the front office. But maybe, just maybe, Dan, he's not going to take the accountability himself, but somebody's got to take the fall. And maybe he's ready to point the blame at Bruce Allen. That's all we can hope. Now, Kevin seems to think that he's going to be gone after the season, he being Bruce Allen. I don't. Let me reiterate that. I don't. But his rationale is that people inside the building feel like Dan is getting that whole 2009 Jim Zorn, Vinny Serrato feeling all over again, where he's got to do something big, all right? He's got to do something to change the tide because it's going in the wrong direction. And it's never been this bad before, all right? You can get into Redskins Park, FedEx Field. You can get into the stadium for $4. You can get into the stadium for $4. It's that bad right now. Okay? It's never been this bad before. Okay? The erosion is starting to set in. I don't know if they realize it or not, but he can see it in the field, in the stands. He can see it in the stadium. He can see it in the record. It reflects. We're a laughing stock of the league. We're one of the worst teams in football. If not for Cincinnati being winless, we'd be the worst team in football. And I'm still not sure that if we played Cincinnati on a neutral field that we wouldn't lose that football game. I'm just saying. So we're one of the worst, if not the worst teams in the league. Dan sees that because of the record. All right. So he's starting to get antsy. And remember what Michael Lombardi said. We got to start putting the pieces of the puzzle together. Remember, take in all the information, all the data, and start drawing your own inferences. Michael Lombardi said, Daniel Snyder is one of those guys that thinks that there's a magic bullet, that one guy can come in and fix it. So if I hire this coach, that he can come in and fix all of this and we can win, not realizing that the problem is systemic and that you're a part of the problem, that Bruce is a part of the problem. He doesn't see it that way. He sees it as, hey, if we just get this one coach, if we just get this one quarterback in here, we could turn things around. And that's where Dan is right now. If I could just get this one coach in here that has discipline, because Jay didn't have discipline all those years. And that's why guys are running amok. And that's why this whole organization is running amok right now, because Jay didn't have the type of structure that you need to win in this league. That's why we gave it to Callahan, because he's got the structure, or so he thought. But we continue to lose. So now he's getting more and more pissed off at the fact that now we sit at 1-9 and have a chance to go 1-15 or 2-14, which is the lowest point that this organization has ever been. And now he wants major changes. And if the next guy comes in here and he says, hey, I'll come in here and I'll turn your program around, but Bruce Allen has to get the hell out of here, Dan is actually at the point where he's willing to consider that. He wasn't before. He is now because he's desperate. And if in fact someone has the cojones, has the balls to come in here and tell Daniel Snyder, I'll sign your contract, but I need power and I need Bruce gone, we'll see if he's desperate enough to relinquish that power and get Bruce the hell out of town. That's our only hope. And that's why people keep asking me who I want the Redskins' next head coach to be. I told you I don't really know. But you know what I do know? You know what I do know is that I want someone that is familiar with the inner workings of Redskins Park. I don't want someone that's an outsider. That's why I was okay with Todd Bowles. I don't want Todd Bowles, though. I'd love Todd Bowles as a defensive coordinator, but I don't want him as a head coach. But I was okay with it because he knows what this organization is about, but he doesn't know. He doesn't really know what it's like to work for Daniel Snyder. He doesn't know what Redskins Park is all about. So I don't want him in here. I don't want him contaminated by what happens and goes on here. I want a guy that actually worked in this building under Daniel Snyder, because I don't want the next guy to come in here and then 5 games into his first year realizes, what the hell did I get myself into? And he's overwhelmed by Ashburn and all of the bullshit that comes with working for Daniel Snyder and all the things that come with being the head coach of the Washington Redskins. Jay Gruden had no idea what he was getting himself into. All he thought he was going to do was come in here and get RG3 to be a good quarterback. And then he realized quickly, Robert Griffin III can't play at this level. Not in my system, at least. And he doesn't want to do the things that made him successful in 2012. So he can't start. And then that's when all the shit hit the fan and he realized, man, I'm in way over my head. Credit to Jay Gruden for lasting as long as he did. Because you guys don't understand what a juggling act it is working for the buffoonery of Dan and Bruce. You don't understand what Jay had to go through. Jay had to bite the bullet. Jay had to be the front man. He was essentially the bulletproof vest that kept those guys clean. When shit would go down, they'd throw Jay under the bus. So they'd throw Doug Williams under the bus. They'd have to stand up and answer questions that they have no business standing up and answering. Had no answers for us. Jay had to put up with a lot and keep a straight face and play the game. So I commend Jay for that for all these years. But he wasn't a good head coach. The next guy that comes in here has to be a disciplinarian, but more importantly, he has to know the inner workings of Redskins Park. And that's why I want a guy like Greg Williams. I'll sign up for Greg Williams. Not just because I expect him to come in and be able to take the parts that we have defensively and make them work, which I'm pretty sure he'd be able to do. Not because of only that, but because I know he would go into that office and tell Dan, if you want me to coach your team, if you want me to be the head coach, I need power. I need control. All right? I need Bruce the hell out of here, and I need to be the guy that has the final say-so. You give me that, and I'll come in here and I'll turn shit around for you. And he knows how Redskin Park goes. He knows everything. He won't be fazed by any of the bullshit that goes on in Redskins Park because he's been in it before. Same thing with Marvin Lewis. I know a lot of you don't want Marvin Lewis. I don't want Marvin Lewis. But he's been here before. Only on a 1-year basis. Okay? He was only here for 1 year as a defensive coordinator before he got the job in Cincinnati. But at least he's worked under Dan Snyder. Different time, too. You know, that was back in the Wild West Vinny days. Same thing can be said for Greg. But again, he knows all of the tomfoolery that goes on behind the scenes. That's why I don't want an outside guy coming in here as the GM. Maybe we should want a guy to come out in here as a GM from the outside. But I don't know if he's going to be able to handle the minutia every day that goes on behind doors at Redskins Park. Maybe that's why I would prefer a guy like Kyle Smith to just be promoted to GM. All right? I don't know. We'll see. But I said all that to say this. Kevin Sheehan believes that Dan Snyder is getting to the point where he's so upset. He's fuming mad right now because of the way this thing has gone. And Bruce hired Jay Gruden. Bruce promoted Bill Callahan. These are all Bruce guys. So he's holding Bruce accountable for all of this stuff that is going on. For 1-15 potentially, 2-14 that's on the table. He's holding Bruce accountable because these are all Bruce guys that have been appointed to the position of head coach. So he's looking at Bruce and saying, you did this. You were supposed to get us out of this mess. You kept telling me that we were close. Well, we're 1-15 or we're 2-14. We're not close. You got to get the hell out of here. That's what Kevin is banking on. I am not, however, banking on that. I do not think that is what is going to take place, but it is a possibility. And because Kevin has heard it from people on the inside that could happen, that is a possibility, my percentage chance of Bruce Allen being fired this offseason started out at 0%. I was 100% sure, positive, that he would be back next season as the Redskins team president, among his many hats that he wears in this organization. After listening to Kevin continuously say over and over again, and now throwing in this extra caveat that, hey, I've got people on the inside that really believe Dan is fed up, it's now at 7% for me that Bruce could be fired, okay? 7%, that's a huge jump for me because when you go from 0 to 7, that's saying a lot. Now, I still have a 93% belief that he'll be back, okay? But 7% is a far cry from 0%, which is where I was and have been since the end of last season when he didn't get canned. So we'll see what happens, but I just thought I'd throw that out there. Kevin is a guy that I trust. He's been wrong in the past, especially about this particular situation, but at some point, Kevin, he's been more right than he's been wrong. And I'm not saying. I'm just saying. But anyway, let's get to in other news. So Dwayne Haskins stepped up to the podium along with interim head coach Bill Callahan. So I want to touch on both of those guys' pressers and what was said. We'll also get to some Redskins social media maneuvers. And I'll quickly just glance over the Lions game as we'll really start to dive in deep on that game tomorrow. So I want to focus in on what was said at the presser today by both Dwayne Haskins and Bill Callahan. We'll read off a couple of comments to wrap up the show, and we'll gloss over the Lions game and kind of give you a preview as we'll really get into that on Thursday. So let's start with Dwayne and what he said when he stepped up to the podium. And one of the biggest things that he talked about was, learning the guys in the locker room. He talked about his ex-offensive coordinator, now the head coach at Ohio State, Ryan Day. And he talked about how Ryan Day always told him, in order to be a leader, you have to have a golf club bag full of clubs that you use on every single different player in that locker room. And I think that's a great analogy because on a golf course, in certain situations, you have to use specific clubs to maximize your effectiveness to navigate your way through the golf course. On a football team as a leader, you can't talk to everyone the same way. Some guys you can get in their face and you can yell at them at a very high pitch and it won't discourage them. As a matter of fact, it will encourage them. It will push them and motivate them to work harder. And other guys, if you get in their face and you scream at them, they will shut down on you. Or you will end up in a confrontation because they will get defensive. You can't handle every guy the same way. Some guys, you got to put your hand on their shoulder and tell them, hey, it's going to be okay. Other guys, you got to slap them on their thigh pad and say, come on, man, let's go. And then other guys, you got to pull them aside. You can't talk to them in a group of guys. They get embarrassed. So you got to pull them off to the side and you got to say, come on, man, I need more from you. I know you're better than this. Let's go. So he's talking about how he's learning. And that kind of came off of the video question that was posed to him at his presser, in which he said, look, I turned off my phone, so I don't really know, which he didn't turn off his phone. That's the standard answer guys give when they want to avoid talking about something. He's not away from social media. He sees everything that's going on. But he said that the whole video thing got overblown. It was just him essentially asking the players, what do I need to do to help you maximize? And it was really him saying, look, I've been sacked 6 times already. I almost got my leg snapped in half just now. What do I have to do to make sure that I don't get sacked a 7th time and don't end up leaving this field on a stretcher? What do I need to do? And so at the end of the day, some of it was probably his fault. Some of it was probably their fault. At the end of the day, those guys looked at him like, bro, we're down 34-3. All right, there's nothing that we can do to come back in this game. I understand your passion and what you want to do. That's great. But and Dwayne, I think what he learned in that situation is that all of those offensive linemen don't respond to one way of motivation. Like, you may have to take and Morgan Moses responded to that, by the way. He was one of the few that actually engaged him in that situation. Maybe you need to take Chase Rouillet aside and say, come on, Chase. All right, we got to get on the same page in terms of line calls. We got to figure out what's the best way to get it protected up so we can get rid of the football. Maybe he has to take him aside and do that. And I don't know all of the ins and outs of that locker room and who does what, but he spoke towards that. And I like the fact that he understands that concept of leadership, that every guy can't be motivated the same way. He also talked about Terry McLaurin and Kelvin Harmon, and he said, look, I knew both of those guys before we got on the Redskins. Obviously, Terry and his relationship go back to Ohio State, but he knew Kelvin Harmon before he went to NC State. So he's like, I knew those guys already. We already had a relationship, so it makes it that much easier that I know what these guys are capable of. I know what these guys are looking to do. They're looking to be great. They're not looking to be good. They're looking to be great. And because I feel like they have that greatness in them, it's going to push me to want to help them be great. And they're going to push me to be great as well. And so I love the fact that I have these guys here to help me grow as a quarterback and help this team grow overall. So he had that to say about those young receivers. I thought that was a really good statement there. And then he talked about the film and he said, look, my biggest thing is I just want to continue to watch the film, see the mistakes that I made, and make sure that I don't repeat these mistakes over again. And so, again, I've said this since the preseason. We've watched Dwayne grow. And with every start, I felt like he improved and he didn't duplicate the same mistake. The only mistake that I've seen consistently from him isn't so much a mistake as it might just be a limitation. And that's throwing the out route to his left, all right, across his body. That's the only thing that I've seen him consistently over and over do. And I just don't think that's a good route for him. And maybe he can throw that route. He's got to be able to throw that route, but he just doesn't throw it consistently enough for me. But that's nor here nor there. He said, look, I watched the film. I correct the mistakes that are correctable, and I look to not duplicate these mistakes. Again, everything that he stepped up to the podium and said, I felt was genuine, and I felt like he's starting to get it. And I actually liked his demeanor at the podium as well. I think he's also starting to get comfortable being the leader of this football team. He was asked about Alex Smith and what Alex Smith has meant to him in his young career thus far. And he said Alex has been great. He's been a mentor, for all of us in that room, but especially me. He's come in, he's helped coach us up, and he's given us pointers. And so I've been really grateful. And he said I'm really fortunate to call him my teammate. So he had some nice things to say about Alex Smith. We'll see if he feels that way about Alex next year when he's probably taking his job, but that's another conversation for another day. You get to the Bill Callahan and what Bill had to say as he stepped up to the podium. And the biggest thing Bill talked about, he started off the press conference talking about Monte Nicholson in that situation, and he pretty much said, look, we don't know anything that's going on behind the scenes with Monte in terms of the police and the league. No one said anything to us. We're just going to keep going about our business, human-like. If Monte is physically able to go and Monte mentally is checked in and ready to go, he's going to continue to play until we are told otherwise. So that's the approach they're going with. I have no problems with that. Everyone seems to want the Redskins to do what's morally right. Again, I told you my moral compass for things like this, I don't have one because I just want to do what's in the best interest of the player. And in this case, Monte may be like, hey, I don't want to go home right now. That's not the best thing for me. And we don't know what's being said behind closed doors. If Monte is playing, it's because Monte wants to play. If Monte thought that this is a situation that was overwhelming and he didn't need to play and he wasn't in the right mental state, then Monte could easily tell the team, I'm not in a position to play right now. They would understand. Someone that was close to him just died. They would understand. So I'm assuming Monte is like, nah, man, I want to play. I want to be out there for my brothers. So that situation, I don't have any problems with the way the Redskins are handling it. Other people seem to have a problem with it. I'm not one of them. But then he talked about some of the guys that didn't practice. I've always told you that Wednesday practices, they roll right off my back. All right. I've talked about the walking boot on Wednesday to practicing on Thursday and starting on Sunday. So I don't worry about Wednesday practices. If guys are going to get a day off, it's going to be Wednesday. All right. So Adrian Peterson didn't practice. Ever since he injured himself in the Minnesota, that was the game before Minnesota, the San Francisco game in the rain, he's been getting Wednesdays off for the most part. They've been taking it easy on him. And he's 34 years old. They need to take it easy on him. He's going to play. He's going to be fine. But also Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen both did not practice. Remember, I told you that Deron Payne left Redskins Park after Sunday's game in a walking boot. Now, again, all of those things usually mean it's a precautionary measure. Not that there's something seriously wrong. He did sprain his ankle. To what degree? I don't know. I don't know if it's a grade 1, 2, or 3 sprain. But I do know this. I expect him to play. I haven't heard anything right now that if he doesn't practice on Thursday, if he's still in a walking boot Thursday, then I'll start to be concerned. But right now, I'm not concerned. We'll find out where he is in the process on Thursday, and we'll figure out where we go from there. And also, Chris Thompson was on the practice field for the first time in a long time, okay? Remember, we haven't seen Chris Thompson probably since, I want to say, the Miami game was the last time we saw Chris Thompson, I want to say. So it's been a while since Chris Thompson has been on the field and been able to help us. And he was on a limited basis, Bill Callahan said. So I'm not going to jump to a conclusion because we've seen guys practice Thursday, Friday, and Saturday and then not play. So I don't know where Chris Thompson is in his recovery, but the fact that he's back on the field in a limited capacity is good news because he hasn't been on the practice field at all since he got the turf toe. So I'm hoping that Chris Thompson can come back because he would be a massive help to Dwayne Haskins in that backfield as not only a pass catcher, but also in pass protection as well. So those were big takeaways from Callahan's presser. As you get into the Lions, I look, the Lions aren't very good either. They're not. But then again, the Jets weren't very good, and they smoked us. So I'm not looking forward to this game. That the Jets game was my last ray of hope, in terms of me thinking we were going to win. You won't catch me slipping like that again. If we win again this season, it will be me being surprised by it. It won't be me expecting it like I did this past week. So I'm going into this game with not a lot of expectations and not a lot of hope. I told you, this is a 1-15 team. I'm convinced of that now more than ever after watching us fall down 34-3 at one point in the Jets ball game. I'm convinced more now than ever that this is a 1-15 outfit that we're watching, which, again, I've never seen one of those in my lifetime as a Redskins fan. Never seen one of those. Never seen a 2-14. But that may exist this season. It's more probable that the Redskins are 1-15, 2-14 than they are 3-13 this season. We're a bad football team. So Lions are going to come in here. Matthew Stafford probably not going to play. Jeff Driscoll went out and put up 30-some-odd points versus the Cowboys, or 27, versus the Cowboys last week. If he could do that to the Cowboys defense that's way more talented than this Redskins defense, what do you expect him to come here and do to the Redskins? So I'm expecting the Lions to be able to carve us up. Their receivers are very talented. I have zero confidence in our secondary's ability to stop them. And after watching Ryan Griffin go nuts on our secondary, I'm expecting their first-round pick, T.J. Hawkinson, to be able to do much of the same. We've always had tight end issues, okay? Always had tight end issues. So I won't be surprised if the Lions come in here, roll up 400 yards of total offense, and score, 29 or 33 points on us and beat us up. So we'll talk more about that game tomorrow, though. Right now, I want to take an opportunity to get into the Redskins nightly news, social media maneuvers, and I want to read a couple of comments from you guys and some ones that I felt were really pertinent. So, and they're pretty long. You guys have been getting really long-winded. I mean, some of these are peace and war type of comments, but I'm going to read them anyway. I find them fascinating and interesting, and I want to share them with the rest of the gang, the rest of the congregation. So, Diego Barco says, Louie, listen to me. And this is how you know someone's serious. When they say, listen to me, and then they take the time to hit the enter key 5 times to create a bunch of space. That's almost like cinematic theatrics, okay? That's his way of building up suspense. Listen to me. And now he hits the enter key 5 times. So there's no text. And then he starts to type. And he typed his ass off. He says, things are going to get worse. All of the players are used to losing now. Even if we bring in a head coach to fix everything, that coach is going to have to get rid of all the players that don't care about winning, aka Morgan Moses. That is never going to happen with the Prince of Darkness, Bruce Allen's clown ass, he says. Poor Dwayne Haskins and Terry, he says. They want to win, but everyone else on the team does not care anymore if they win or lose, and that is so toxic. That is contagious. In order for us to have a winning culture, we need to get rid of Bruce. And then, he says, bring in a GM. The GM picks an identity, hires a head coach to carry out that identity, draft players the head coach wants or needs, develops players, and then establishes a winning culture. He says, then we can get stops on third down. Then we can win games with players that are not that talented and make people want to come and work for us. He says, and I will finish with this, Louie. We don't play our best players. We play our draft picks who aren't ready or our highest paid free agents. We have had some good undrafted players or free agents who are better than the players we have on this team, but we won't play them because of political reasons. Any head coach that comes in here doesn't have any say on his coaching staff because Bruce Allen tries to control everything. He says, obviously, our players are not talented this year, but in past years, we have had opportunities to build a good roster, but because of Bruce Allen wants to show off his offseason moves and free agency and draft picks, we suck. He says, thank you, Louie. I'm done. That's a hell of a comment, man. A hell of a comment there by Diego Barco. And I don't really disagree with anything that he just said. I really don't. That's why when guys say tank, I have a problem with that, because when you tank, you start to ingrain a culture that is anything but a damn good culture. All right. And so you start to ingrain losing in all the players. And I've always said, you start to have players say when things go wrong, here we go again, because they're used to it. So they're expecting it. That's not what you want to cultivate if you're trying to and have a winning culture start to develop. And so I'm with him on a lot of what he said. McAllister Nicholas says, all right, Louie, the fan base is tired of being patient. He says, I agree with you, but we are thirsty for success, as we all are. All right, but you can't rush this thing. He says, we are waiting for the generational talent like Sean Taylor. I speak to fans who are tired of waiting. I know in order for this franchise to experience success, major changes will have to be made. Patience is what each of us will have no choice but to succumb to. I figure this, he says, it's such a losing mindset in brackets, he says, parentheses, excuse me. He says it's such a losing mindset, but it can't get any worse than this shit. He says, I wonder, is the Bama boys, he's talking about, comfortable playing a role in the play? He says, I believe our defensive line collectively could be special. A mix of poor coaching, poor technique, and poor play from the linebackers could be the reason for the dip in production, along with our overall record and mess of an organization. So there are a lot of true statements in there. It's a lot larger than just the linebackers, but they haven't been great. We haven't had great linebacker play in Washington for quite some time now. I mean, it's been pretty porous, probably since the London Fletcher days. We haven't had elite linebacker play in quite some time. Taylor Bouchard says, what up, Lou? I will say this about Dwayne. He's going to get better. All the mistakes he's showing are very correctable. He needs to figure out his own strength, and then he will succeed. Allen does look like he's regressed a bit, but I still believe he hasn't recovered from his injury he suffered earlier this year, and I could be wrong. As for Payne, he's a puppy. As long as he is hustling, I'm cool. We're 1-9, and he could easily quit, and we'd understand. Do I want him to be elite? Yes. I just think the team has lost that dog mentality since the season is over. Doesn't mean to half-ass, which he clearly isn't, which tells me he's still fighting. As for Sweat, I'm a little disappointed, but he's raw. He's a raw talent that will need probably another year to develop the technician side, and I think that he will be a disruptive force for us. Keep up the good work, fam. And so I thought those were some really good comments that I wanted to share with you guys. And I want to piggyback off of what Taylor said. Sometimes I don't take into consideration that guys are dealing with things. And, I talked about Jonathan Allen looking like he regressed. Taylor made a great point that maybe he's dealing with that injury that he had earlier in the season. And if you've ever played football at any level, and I really don't care what level it is, high school, college, or professionally, all right, you know the grind that a season entails. I remember I strained my groin in the second week of my high school, my junior year. I strained my groin in the second week of the season, and I wasn't right the rest of the year. But you don't get time off in football. It's not like basketball where if you sprain your ankle, you sit down for a week or two, you let it heal, and then you come back and you miss those games. Football is a tough guy sport. You got to push through that stuff. You get your treatment, and then you get your ass back on the practice field, and then you play, whenever the games are being played, whether it's Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. That's the mentality you have to have as a football player. So you could be dealing with a number of things. Sore this, strain that, pull this, all of these things, you got to gut it out. And so that's something that I haven't really taken into consideration, and I'm wrong for doing that. And so, Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne could be dealing with a bunch of knick-knack injuries that are hampering them, that are slowing them down. And I haven't taken those things into consideration, and I'm wrong for that. And so Taylor is absolutely right about that. And also, I think that, when you look at this team, I've seen some guys that I feel like aren't giving maximum effort, but 1-9 does that to you. And that's another reason why I don't think you can judge Dwayne on what he does necessarily from a team standpoint in these final 8 games, because you need to give him a clean slate. You need to see what he can do when you're 0-0 and everyone is going out and giving maximum effort. When you're 1-9, guys know the season's over. I listen to Chris Cooley all the time, and he says, look, man, when we had bad seasons, I was counting down the days until the season was over, all right? I could not wait to get out of there. Guys are already at that point. So you can't really gauge Dwayne fully on a team where guys are giving up. And you saw it defensively versus the Jets. Some guys gave up in that game, all right? There were guys that put their hands up and said, man, I don't give a shit. And so I think there's something to be said about giving a young quarterback an opportunity to play when the record is 0-0, which is why I wanted Dwayne to play earlier in the season when there were still things on the line, when guys still cared and games still mattered. Now that we're 1-7 and 1-8 and 1-9, guys don't give a shit. All right, guys do not care. So I thought those were all great comments, and keep them coming, guys. Keep leaving your comments down in the comment section below of all these videos. You can also hit me up via Twitter at Louie T Network on Twitter or on IG. And that's down in the description below. I forgot what my IG is. I'm not going to lie to you. I forgot my handle. Okay. But anyway, that's going to do it for your man Louie T here on the Redskins Nightly News. Lots of Lions talk tomorrow, in addition to some coordinator talk. We'll get the coordinator. Greg Minuski will step up to the podium. I really wish that we had KOC step into the podium on Thursdays instead of Fridays. I'd much rather hear from him than Greg Minuski. But anyway, we'll talk about what was said, and we'll get into the Lions a little bit and any other pertinent information regarding our Redskins. But remember, we got skin in the game. Why? Because we're Skins fans for life. I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Remember, if it's not your man T, it's not the best NFL coverage it could be. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the Louie T Network if you haven't already done so, and share this video if at all possible. I'm your man, Louie T. I'm getting out of here. This has been the Redskins Nightly News. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one.